When it comes to planning a retreat, there's ways to get it to go from average to incredibly transformative. Welcome to Retreat Boss, where we speak about inspired travel for fun, transformation, and profit. Guest experts will give you their tips and tricks on creating the most impactful retreats, both for you and your clients. Whether you want a meditative getaway, a wellness trip, or a business escapade, we provide you with the best advice in organizing and hosting a tremendous event. Join Catherine Kontos as she talks with fellow experts about creating exclusive and successful retreats. Dive deep into the most unique activities, the best destinations to visit, and the most uplifting trips out there that you can discover. Here is your host, Catherine Kontos. Bhaskar Goswami is the founder of the award-winning company BODHI and his nonprofit organization Dana, and a well-respected yogapreneur. He has led numerous international retreats and is an acclaimed speaker, having presented in prestigious organizations and events like the COP22, which is the UN Climate Change Conference in Morocco. Bhaskar, I'm so happy to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be with you, Catherine. So nice.
You know, we know each other beyond just this Zoom interview, and I have such high respect for you because of what you do. You are very well known in the Quebec, the Montreal, Quebec area, and internationally. And I've been following you and been a fan for a while because I love your message. I love your method of teaching. I think you are quite an inspirational person, and I was excited when you said yes to come to the show. So thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm delighted. What an introduction.
Yeah. Well, it's all true. It's all true. Bhaskar, you've been doing this for quite a long time, and I'd like to know what your story is, because you have a master's in engineering and you were practicing that for quite a few years. Now, how did you go from, because it's a very different practice, right? It's a very different career. What happened? What is your history? What transformed you or appealed to you in the yoga space that made you make this your life choice, your career?
Like most big changes, there's usually some trauma involved. And so my story goes back to my late teen, early 20s when I was doing some part-time work. I was lifting heavy equipment. I was also playing semi-professional tennis. So I suddenly started developing very intense back spasms, really intense. It created a lot of anxiety in my life. It just came out of nowhere. And my mother told me that there's a yoga master who is here. Why don't you go meet with him? The moment I laid my eyes on him, I was just in awe. I'd never seen a human being like that. He was just this, what I call a Hollywood director's dream of a yogi. Perfect posture, shiny bright eyes, long matted hair. The way he spoke, the way he moved, he just made life look easy. And I remember thinking in my younger days, if I could be just a little bit like him, this is worth diving into. So I was really engaged by the amazing teacher. And I'm very grateful to say that he took me in as his son. And then I made the most peculiar discovery that this practice of yoga is actually very scientific. It has very profound scientific mechanistic principles that I wasn't even aware of. Psychological, transpersonal principles. So my engineering brain was actually very intrigued by the practice. The way he taught it, there was no beliefs and philosophies and grandiose, concepts. It was very tangible, practical, very experience-based. Yet I discovered so much about myself that I was just not aware of. My back pain, fortunately, went away a long time ago. But what stayed with me is this tremendous enthusiasm for what I would call a science of self-awareness, which is what I call yoga. It's except what scientists would call experimenting, yogis call experiencing, but it has the exact same scientific rigor and it's been tested, validated for generations and generations. And here we are standing on the shoulders of all these giant scientists, like, the Buddhas and the Patanjalis in the world. And also when I teach yoga, it really carries that sort of engineering aspect. How does it work? How do you utilize it? What are the mechanics behind it? Even when we talk about the invisible, like the energy system and the breath and so on, there are mechanistic principles behind it, which I find are very profound. So all I do is just share my enthusiasm from like an engineer yogi perspective.
That's very interesting. I never thought of it that way. That's actually a new perspective for me. And it's true. It does use a lot of, it is a lot of science, because there's like energy and there's physics and there's, all these things that are utilized during a yoga practice. And when you combine that with, the mantras, it creates this crazy energy, I find, when you're in that space. It's almost like you feel like you could do anything. At least that's how I feel. I feel like I'm at another level, another consciousness, even at times.
Yeah, once you feel that, you just want, for me, I just want to share that with the world. It is euphoric. It is so healthy.
It is.
Yes, absolutely.
And I say it's like, I've never done drugs, but I'm like, this is what a high must feel like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very, very, very affordable drugs. Yes.
Cheap. So you dove deeply into the yoga space. From what I saw in your bio, you have a few people that you were learning from. What was that like for you to just dive into it so deeply and enthralled by it and just have it be who you are, who you became? What was that like for you?
I feel so grateful. I've been remarkably blessed in my life journey. The way I see it is, amongst 1,000 yoga instructors, you'll be very lucky to find one yoga teacher. And amongst 1,000 yoga teachers, you'll be extremely lucky to find one yoga master. In my life, I was blessed with 2 amazing yoga masters, like next level. There's no way to compare it. They create a state change that's so profound. The second master was here in Montreal when I came. So passionate about yoga practice. I went to the temple nearby to practice, and the priest said, you need to go meet with this person. So he directed me to an Israeli yoga teacher, Yoham, and his yoga name was Shriramani Shriram. And just again, another magnificent human being. And he was a soldier in Israel, and he was traumatized, and he almost took his own life. And then he discovered yoga. So he teaches yoga from a place of, this saved my life. So there's so much strength in this man, and also so much heart. And again, he took me as his son because he felt my passion. And I literally moved in to the yoga center. He was living downstairs. I was living upstairs. Every morning, 5 a.m., a small group got together, and we had a really intense, deep, advanced practice. The asana, the pranayama, the meditation, and then I went to work as an engineer, just completely lit. I felt so super healthy. And I saw my colleagues not doing so well, struggling up the stairs, having 6 cups of coffee or so just to wake up, aching and paining and, getting anxious and so on. And I knew that this practice, simple practice, could help them so much. And as an engineer, I couldn't have the impact. I was treated like the cute yogi engineer. My screensaver was yoga, it was like my thing, So I had to actually come out of that engineering setting and come back in as a yoga consultant to share this beautiful practice, which is why I transitioned from an engineer to what I call a yogipreneur and started my first company, Bodhi, to bring wellness into workplaces.
And how does that work? What do? You go into the corporate world, the company, and you offer what is it that you just offer courses, or what is it that you do? Or you teach them mind space or everything? What is it?
So imagine this, it's 2007. I have no business background. I have nothing. I just show up empty-handed, no paper, no PowerPoint. And I'm speaking with the HR director of a major company in Canada. It's a miracle I even had that interview. And I remember expressing that I know this practice will make the people here healthier, happier, more peaceful. This I can guarantee. What it does to your ROI and profit and things like this is none of my business. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But since you spend most of your waking hours here with these people, why not hang out with healthy, happy, peaceful people? And chances are they'll be more productive and more creative. And simple point, she seemed to agree with this point of view. And she also said, but I want you to know we have no budget for this. Okay, fine. So I gave a 1-hour presentation to their communication team, to their medical team, and also their top executive team. And then less than a month later, I have a $50,000 check in my hand.
Oh my God.
So it's never a question of not enough money. It's usually not enough value. So once you really understand what this practice is, and that your employees are your primary asset, it's a very simple thing. So my methods are very simple and very logic based. And to your point, it's anything the company wishes for. Sometimes it's an executive retreat. Sometimes it's a team building event. Sometimes it's just a seminar or workshop, and sometimes it's weekly classes. So I really listen to what the company's needs are, what their stress points are, what they wish for their company to be, like what is their culture that they're trying to create, and support that. So I see myself more as a consultant for the company, and providing the services that can bring about that culture in an embodied way.
And this is what I try to make corporations understand through my posts on LinkedIn and when I speak to them, is that retreats, specifically because that's my business, right? Retreats in specific are truly transformational for their company culture, their values, their vision, camaraderie amongst the teams, team building, loyalty towards the company. Then, of course, because they're healthier and happier, production is higher, all these things. And I'm glad you brought it up. What do you see when after a retreat, like what's the feedback from the companies that you've done retreats for? What do they say about, what do they say? They must rehire you, right? So obviously it works. Do you see a difference, and do they see the difference and tell you about it?
Firstly, having done this for 20 years, I totally resonate with what you've expressed. This is the most effective way to really instill a corporate culture. When you wake up with your team and your colleagues, when you practice together, when you eat together, when you actually share a human connection outside of job labels and titles and so on, you touch upon something that's much more cohesive and co-creative that you just can't get when you have like a seminar or a weekly class. It's good. Seminars, they serve to inform, inspire. It's good. Weekly classes maintain the body and mind. But when you actually do a retreat, then you actually create a community, a deep sense of community. So I'm just privileged to have a front row seat in these retreats. It's incredible to see these people come in, good, of course, good people, but they come in with their story, the job titles and their tensions and stress. And when they leave as the highest version of themselves. You can literally see them becoming healthier, joyous, inspired, co-creating together. So it just sets the scene for deep creative work. Very often with companies, they use retreats for connecting at a human level and also co-creating. Maybe they're envisioning what their future will be like. So creating meaningful dialogue and doing a practice before the dialogue. When you approach it from a whole different state, you get a whole different conversation. So it's one of those things that's hard to express in words. It just really has to be a felt experience, how powerful it is for executives to get together in a retreat setting and just hang out as human beings and speak in a very authentic way outside the mask of a job title.
Yeah, without the mask, without the suit, without the mask of what your title represents when you're in business. How do you get the executives who are maybe never done any type of yoga or type of retreat? How do you transform them during a retreat?
Honestly, they transform themselves because first of all, the retreat setting is conducive to that. When you go on site in a corporate, it's good, but you have that whole corporate vibe, so they still hold on, to their job title. When you go outside into a retreat setting, suddenly the scene invites in a more humanistic sort of approach. So the masks become a little loose. And there are icebreaker events, there are dialogue circles, there are ways to, humanize the context. So usually a retreat starts on a Friday afternoon, saves the weekend retreat. And the first Friday is just like a buffer zone to disengage from the city life. And it's usually a digital detox. So we recommend people to have no or low digital interactions. And just hang out, eat together, have conversations. The real retreat starts the Saturday morning, and there are many different flavors of retreats, I always say. We can have the Club Med kind of retreat, all the way to a Zen monastery kind of retreat.
Right.
And they all have their pros and cons. My retreats are more towards the Zen monastery side. So they're always, alcohol-free, vegetarian. There's a discipline, there's a schedule to it. So you almost live that monk-like existence for that weekend. And it has a very purifying quality. In India, the system is called the Gurukul system. And believe me, I've tried to improve it and I cannot improve it. It's been refined so beautifully over the centuries. So I just essentially offer what's called the Gurukul system of a morning practice. It's usually 2 meals a day, not 3. Evening practices, dialogue circles, and all of that just invites more and more human connection. So by the time Sunday comes along, you really have a group of friends, I would even say family, that are just really there for each other. They're sharing so vulnerably, authentically, beautifully, appreciating each other. Because once that stress goes away, we're all just really beautiful human beings.
We are.
And my role is really to create a safe space for that to happen.
And I find they become more approachable, right? Everybody becomes more approachable. That person you see in the office where you had no connection with, now you have a connection. That is deeper. This is where the loyalty lies. This is where the employees, the staff, whoever just becomes a fan of the company and is there. And, isn't it, I find it such a gift as a host to see these transformations happen every single time, right?
It's not the IT guy. It is Sam, who has an autistic daughter, or now it is Sally, and the foreman. She is maybe whatever her story might be. She loves sailing. She loves she loves traveling. There's a person behind that. It's no longer just a job title, and it just really humanizes the culture in the workplace. I would say it sort of enriches a deep embodied culture of care, and I've seen that time and time again. And then from that, incredible initiatives take place within the organization.
And that is so important. That's so important for the corporate culture to understand that you are like family, right? That you do know that it's Sam who has this and that, more than just it's the IT guy or, whatever it is, because now there's a name, there's a story, there's a human with pain, there's a human with joy. And it just creates this dynamic that it just changes everything. The perspective of everything just changes within days, which is something, like you said before, it's nice to have a seminar once a week or whatever it is. Those are all great. But what you're doing is you're creating like a fast forward or whatever. It just happens so fast within just a few days that may take a very long time or never when you introduce the rest of your life and problems and issues as you're doing it once a week, once a month, whatever it is. And thank you for bringing all that up, because I find it so important that people understand this unique approach, because it's not mainstream yet. And this is my goal, and I hope your goal too, to make it mainstream, where retreats are somewhere where people can connect in ways that they could never on a daily basis. And absolutely. And I believe it's the way of the future, especially after this pandemic.
We are so longing for that human connection, so many of us. This Zoom video is good. It serves a purpose. It does not serve the purpose of actually communing together as human beings. We are natural people. One of our basic needs is that sense of sharing, being heard, that human interaction.
Exactly.
Which pales in comparison when you compare it to a Zoom interaction. So yeah, I sincerely feel that, like you said, these times are very pertinent for offering retreats to colleagues and to your team and so on, just to reconnect again as human beings. So much has been lost in all the noise and confusion and uncertainty in the air nowadays. Let's just go back to ground level human being reality.
Yes.
Retreats are great for that.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. There's another part of your business, or a different business that you do, which is a nonprofit organization called Dana, where people come in and it's donation based, and you've been doing that as well. What made you come up with that, and how does it work?
So let's go back to that story when I was late teen, early 20s, and I met this great yoga master. It so happens that he was living in a South Indian family's home, complete strangers to me. I never met them before. I go into a very humble home. They've moved their furniture. They've laid out like 10 yoga mats on either side. I did the practice and I saw people putting money into a box. And I realized, oh, okay. So and it is in a sort of reverential way. So, okay. So I did that as well. So that was completely anonymous contribution. And that's how yoga has been taught for centuries. So there's nothing new here. It's just when yoga came into the Western world, it took on the Western mechanics of fitness, the YMCAs and the gyms and so on, where there's memberships and subscriptions and, and a fixed amount that you pay. Yet traditionally, yoga, meditation, and all that comes from that has always been from generous, spontaneous contribution. And the reason simply is, I don't know how valuable this is for you. For somebody, it's a complete waste of time. For somebody, it removes the back pain. For somebody, it's completely life-changing. And I don't know what your life situation is. Perhaps you're a multi-billionaire. Perhaps you're in between jobs, So it's not for me to dictate what is worth to you. My job is to teach to the fullness of my heart and capacity. That's my job. Your job is to acknowledge what is meant for you and contribute accordingly, not necessarily to me, but so that these teachings can go on and benefit other people. So it's coming from a place of, I appreciate this teaching so much. May my contribution help these teachings to benefit others as well. And that's where generosity comes in. The word dana means generosity. So when we do this from a generous place, it just creates a whole different atmosphere. So a little story behind this is that, not to dwell on it, I became very sick 8 years ago, almost died. I caught a very rare condition. Nevertheless, I came out of it. And I was not strong enough to keep my 2 yoga centers going. We had 2 centers at the time. And I taught the class and I said, I'm going to have to close the center very soon. And the space became very quiet, very heavy, dark and sad. People started crying and hugging each other because we had built something very beautiful together throughout the years. They asked me why. And that's when I said, once I'm done paying the rent, electricity, heating, and, marketing, teachers, and so on, there's nothing left. I'm doing it as a labor of love. I just can't do it anymore. And then one student spontaneously said, well, I've just refurbished my basement. It's completely empty. Come teach in my house. Another person said, if I move the furniture, it can hold about 14 people. Come teach in my house. And the third person said, come teach in my basement. It was so generous. I felt so moved by that. I said, sure. So next week, I have a dollar store box. I'm going house to house, doing what I love to do. I come back home, I open this box, and it's full of money. It's like $400+ for an hour and a half class. It was ridiculous. So I told my wife that this is a wonderful way, very agreeable way. I just do what I do and I don't worry about anything else. And we did a crowdfunding campaign. It's just a 3-minute video of her and I speaking about the Dana concept, and it raised $17,000 Canadian.
Wow.
It was amazing. And that's what helped us build the website, build the app. So what's great about the story is the idea came from the people, the funding came from the people, and it's really open source for everybody. So now we have this platform, Dana, where anybody can share their gifts. If you're a musician, a dancer, whatever you cook, whatever you might be, you want to share your gift that uplifts the human condition, you can do it through Dana, where people come, anybody can come, they appreciate and experience your practice. And afterwards, they make an anonymous contribution. And the contribution goes 100% to the teacher. And then when the teacher feels moved to do so, he or she can make a contribution back to Dana. So the whole thing is based on generosity.
Wow, that's amazing. I knew what you did, but I didn't know the details of what you just said. And that's an incredible, wow.
What's incredible is how simple it is.
Generosity.
It's very
all
simple.
Based on generosity.
And it's nothing new, Catherine. It's been around for centuries. Every culture has this. Every single culture, every synagogue, monastery, church, temple, Gurudwara, it's all based on generosity.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you think of business, because when you exchange money, it's business. We don't think of it when we go to a church, but it is, right? They need that money to fund what they do. When you go wherever you go and you're giving a donation, it's to help to support them and have them continue doing their work. But you're right, it's not new, but the way you have it in this way of like, how can I say it? You're not a church, that's what I'm saying. It's basically an idea that you had based on these concepts and said, what if, right? Because of your experience.
Yeah.
And that what if became into this circle of love that keeps giving.
That's the world I want to live in. And
Me
it's
too.
everybody, and those who go, yeah, me too, and they jump in, and that's the Dana culture, the community. It's just by the people, for the people, completely non-profit, completely open source. Anybody can come and play. And yeah, it's again privileged to have a front row seat, and all the great ideas that come up, that people are coming up with. It's just brilliant.
Amazing. Well, I feel privileged to have you here today. I thank you again for being here. You taught me so much with the conversation before the podcast and during the podcast. So the value that you've given is incredible. Thank you so much for being here. Anybody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
My name.com, so it's bhaskargoswami.com. You can reach me from there.
Yes, and the links will be on our website, retreatboss.com, where you can find him and link up and do some great work together. Thanks again for being here.
My pleasure, Catherine. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to the Retreat Boss podcast. When it comes to achieving wellness and transformation, nothing is more effective and profound than a well-orchestrated retreat. Achieve huge revenue growth, one trip at a time. Want to learn more on expanding your business with retreats? Visit retreatboss.com, when profitable retreats are made easy. Be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show at retreatboss.com/podcast. Until next time, take care.